Well, good afternoon. Hello. It's great to see you all. Welcome to our State of the City. I'm Heather McGrail, the President and CEO of the Greater Manchester Chamber, and despite the nice weather out there, you're all here, so thank you for that. We tried to pitch for an outdoor event today, but we couldn't get full buy-in, so appreciate you being here. I wanted to thank the New Hampshire Institute of Politics, of course, for hosting us here again today. Such a wonderful venue and partnership with the Chamber. And also, really thank our board of directors who are here. I'm going to read the list of some of our board members here today. We have Matt Cookson, our chair of Cookson Communications. Dr. Joe Favazza of St. Anselm College. Thank you again, Joe, for hosting us here today. Trini Houghton of Ripple Effect Studio. Josh Wright of Wells Fargo Advisors. Ted Kitchens of the Manchester-Boston Regional Airport. Ken Cenas of St. Mary's Bank. Mike Harrington of Harrington and Company. Jody Nizaka of the City of Manchester. So thank you all for being here, but we couldn't do what we do without our board of directors who are so strong and committed to the work of our chamber. And I would be remiss if I didn't also point out that we have former Mayor Syl Dupuis here with us today. Hi, Syl. And last but not least, our presenting sponsor, Bellwether Community Credit Union, has really always been a partner in these wonderful events where we connect our business community with our elected officials. It's really important as part of our chamber mission that we increase that connectivity at all times and really help to inform you all on the issues that are of top heart and mind to all of us. So I really want to thank Bellwether for their continued support in this effort. And a list of some other sponsors with gratitude. Christine Louise Publications from Stroll North End, Manchester. Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare. Hoyle Tanner and Associates. And New Hampshire Healthy Families. We also have our media partner, the Spradling Group, and of course, again, the New Hampshire Institute of Politics that's hosting us here today. So thank you to all of you so much for your support. At this time, I'd like to introduce Nathan Saller, the President and CEO of Bellwether, to come up and say a few words. Nathan.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's so nice to be with you this afternoon and see so many friends and familiar faces. For over 100 years, Bellwether has been helping the residents of New Hampshire buy homes, save for the future, and grow their businesses. And we're very proud to once again sponsor today's State of the City event. As a not-for-profit credit union, our objective is serving our members, and that means not that we don't necessarily take risks to maximize profits. As a local community credit union, our members are everyday New Hampshire people and businesses, not huge depositors from out of state. Serving our neighbors, friends, and the small businesses in our community has been our mission, and that mission makes us stronger in the current economic environment. I'd like to thank all of you for being here today, and Mayor Craig for joining us and sharing your State of the City address with us. And I'd also like to thank the incredible Chamber team for all you do for the business community and for putting together today's program. Thank you very much.
Okay, so at this time, I'd like to introduce Scott Spradling, who is an Emmy Award-winning former reporter, anchor, and political director for WMUR in Manchester, as well as a longtime Chamber Board member and Executive Committee member. Scott is going to run the rest of this show, so without further ado, I'll hand it over to Scott.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. And all of you get extra points for being inside on what has turned into an unbelievably gorgeous, warm spring day out there. So major props for filling these seats. Thank you for being here. So As you are all well familiar, what we love to do here is blend an opportunity for our city and state leaders to share with us what they are seeing with what's happening with the state of things, so in this particular case, the state of our state's largest city. And then we'll sit down for a Q&A afterwards. So I will introduce our mayor formally for her remarks first in a few minutes. She'll go for about 15 minutes. And then we've collected questions both from what you saw at the front desk and also things that have been sent in to us. So we've compiled them, really reflecting the mission and some of the top objectives of the city of Manchester. So we look forward to today's conversation, and let's get right to the introduction. For those of you who don't know and may have been living under a rock, born and raised in Manchester, Joyce Craig is here for the state of the city. She is a graduate of Manchester Public Schools, grew up in Ward 8 on the east side of town. She earned her degree in business administration from the University of New Hampshire. She worked in the marketing industry for 15 years. She began her public service actually back in 2007 when she served on the Board of School Committee. In 2009, she won a seat on the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, serving 3 terms representing Ward 1. In 2017, Joyce Craig became elected the 48th mayor of Manchester and the first woman elected to that office in our city's history. She's now serving in her 3rd term, and in case you have not heard the news, she did announce recently that she will not be running for re-election, and she is not currently willing to volunteer for a lot of your causes as soon as she leaves office. She needs a break. So Joyce and her husband, attorney Michael Craig, have 3 children, William, Sarah, and Catherine. It's my honor now to introduce the mayor of Manchester, Joyce Craig.
Good afternoon. I'd like to start by thanking Heather and everyone from the Chamber, as well as Neil and the Institute of Politics for hosting this event. And I'd also like to thank Scott for moderating, as always. I'd also like to thank Bellwether Community Credit Union for being the presenting sponsor of today's event. And I want to take a moment to recognize my parents who are with us today, Tom and Jan Hopkins. It's bittersweet to think that I'm delivering my final State of the City address as mayor of the city of Manchester. As a 4th-generation resident, serving as the mayor of Manchester has been one of the greatest honors of my life. I'm proud of everything that we've accomplished, and I'm excited for the future of our city. Back in 2017, I ran for mayor to get Manchester back on track. And today, I can confidently say our city is heading in the right direction. During my time as mayor, we attracted hundreds of millions of dollars in economic development initiatives, invested in public safety and public education, repaired an unprecedented number of roads, and supported the creation of over 2,000 housing units. We confronted challenges head-on, demanding more accountability from the state and working with other mayors to find solutions to issues in our communities. Public education, as Scott mentioned, is what drove me to run for public office. I had 3 young children, and as a parent, saw that our schools were struggling. As mayor, I've prioritized public education and improving student achievement. We've decreased class sizes, expanded higher-level learning opportunities to all students, and ensured that every student has access to technology. And for the first time in decades, we implemented district-wide curriculum for reading, math, science, and social studies. While we still have a great deal of work to do, the Manchester School District finally has a strategic plan and a vision for the future. Thanks in large part to Manchester Proud, and I know many individuals in this audience are part of Manchester Proud, so I thank you for that. This group is made up of business and community leaders who believe, as I do, that strong schools lead to a thriving community that offers better jobs, a strengthened tax base, safer neighborhoods, and enhanced property values. I believe our educators are our district's greatest strength. When I first took office, we had a hard time attracting and retaining teachers. We've since raised wages to be competitive with surrounding districts, and as a result, have reduced the number of open teaching positions to the lowest it's been in years. We also raised the minimum wage for all district staff, including our valued paraprofessionals, and are offering more professional development opportunities than we've ever done before. In last year's State of the City, I announced the Manchester Promise, a program in partnership with Southern New Hampshire University, Duet, and the Manchester Community College, which allows Manchester Public School students who normally wouldn't have the opportunity to attend school to do so debt-free. The program's first cohort includes 25 students, 11 students from Central, 8 from West, 3 from Memorial, and 3 from Manchester School of Technology. 20 of these students are first-generation college students, and 7 are first-generation Americans. And I'm proud to say the entire cohort is doing well. They're actually outperforming the overall freshman class by almost a full grade point average. Over the last 5 years, we've faced issues in our community head-on, demanded more accountability from the state, and collaborated with residents, businesses, nonprofits, and the faith-based community to implement evidence-based solutions. And again, many of you who have contributed and collaborated are in this audience, so I want to thank you. Public safety has always been our top priority, and together, we've made Manchester a safer city. Since I took office in 2018, overall crime has dropped by 12% and violent crime by 38%. My budget's funded the largest police complement ever, adding 30 new officers. And we increased the number of required annual training hours focusing on de-escalation, use of non-lethal force, implicit bias, and cultural responsiveness. And we invested in technology, including gunshot recognition software, integrated video software, and Manchester was the first community in New Hampshire to utilize body cameras. And we are determined to reduce violent crime even more. We've increased foot patrols, implemented a gun violence prevention strategy, and enacted environmental improvements to reduce crime. And as we all know, there's a statewide housing shortage, which is contributing to an increase in homelessness across New Hampshire. Earlier this year, eight mayors from New Hampshire, from Berlin to Nashua, Claremont to Dover, joined me in urging the Department of Health and Human Services and the governor to increase emergency shelter beds across the state and add medical respite beds so that individuals who are experiencing homelessness have a place to recover after spending time in the hospital. We also requested transparency on the use of state funds to address homelessness and substance use disorder that come into our local communities. Manchester, once again, is leading the way. With fatality prevention in mind, we stood up 3 emergency winter shelters, thanks to the hard work of our fire department. This included the first city-run emergency shelter in the state and a women's shelter run by the YWCA in a state-owned building in the city. The fire department, with Squad 1, continues to do outreach. We added a healthcare for the homeless mobile van to provide medical services and created a Department of Housing Stability to coordinate efforts with our nonprofit partners and business partners. And we're engaging national experts to ensure we're approaching this issue with the most effective way possible. Starting next month, we'll be partnering with the National Alliance to End Homelessness to analyze our current systems and supports, identify our gaps in services, and make recommendations on how we can improve. COVID-19 showed us how important it is to ensure the overall health of our community. So we've added neighborhood-based community health workers to meet the needs of our most vulnerable residents, including our seniors and new Americans. We established a Healthy Corner Store initiative to increase healthy food access to our historically disadvantaged neighborhoods, and established Project Launch, a newborn baby home visit program to help new mothers provide the best care to their babies. And I'm excited to announce that Manchester has been selected as one of just 5 cities to participate in the National League of Cities of Opportunity Action Cohort. This 15-month technical assistance program will focus on expanding health equity to ensure that our residents have access to the same opportunities, no matter what neighborhood they live in. And we're tackling substance use disorder with a new director of overdose prevention, increased access to treatment facilities, and a nationally recognized overdose strike team that targets hotspot areas when spikes occur. Manchester's economy is thriving due to the work in recruiting private investment and securing federal grants. Earlier this week, the Wall Street Journal named Manchester 10th out of 326 cities with the hottest job markets in the country, based on our low unemployment rates and high wages. But this is only the beginning. In September, Manchester was one of 21 winners of the Economic Development Administration's Build Back Better Regional Challenge. This was the largest federal economic development challenge in decades, and awards went to regions that put forward transformative plans to revitalize local industries. Manchester, along with our higher education and industry partners, was awarded $44 million to advance the biofabrication industry. This funding, along with an additional $12 million in industry match, will create over 7,000 new jobs over the next 7 months and make our region a leader in the emerging high-tech field. The Manchester-Boston Regional Airport continues to be a driver of jobs and tourism here in Manchester and throughout the state. We welcome Spirit Airlines, the first new airline in 17 years, Amazon Air Service, doubling our cargo space and adding hundreds of new jobs, and most recently, Avelo Airlines with nonstop service to Raleigh, North Carolina. Manchester has the hottest housing market in the country, and we're working hard to meet that demand. There are over 2,000 new units in development across the city, including 500 new affordable units. We allocated over $10 million to Manchester's Affordable Housing Trust Fund to support these projects. We established the Manchester Housing Commission to make recommendations to increase affordable housing options, and we're performing a comprehensive rewrite of our zoning ordinances to support the development of additional housing. We made unprecedented investments in our aging public infrastructure. During my time as mayor, we've repaired 215 miles of roads and sidewalks, which accounts for 50% of all of the roads in the city. We won a $25 million federal RAISE grant to transform the South Commercial South Elm Street area. This massive infrastructure investment will make our community safer for pedestrians, bikers, and vehicles, better connect the Mill Yard and downtown to South Elm Street and South Willow Street. And my favorite part about this is that it adds a pedestrian bridge over Granite Street. The project is currently in its design phase, and construction will begin in 2024. And we're expanding public transportation to better meet the needs of our community. We doubled the number of buses on the city's 2 most popular routes, and we'll soon add an intercity bus that will run 5 times a day, taking people from downtown to the Manchester-Boston Regional Airport, as well as the park and rides on I-93. And in my latest budget, I included a local match for a new multimodal transportation center to serve over 200,000 MTA passengers. I'm thankful for the opportunity to serve this great city and to work with all of the hardworking department heads and city and school district employees. I'm also so grateful for the support of our business community and our residents. The state of the city is strong because of this community's ability to come together, take on tough fights, and create positive change. Being mayor of my hometown is the best job that I've ever had. I will always be Manchester's biggest supporter, and I look forward to accomplishing even more during the remainder of my time as mayor and beyond. Thank you.
All right, now we're doing the wireless mic thing. You can hear me okay? All right, we'll get it on the mayor's.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you sitting down with us.
Yeah.
Happy spring. So I feel like I sort of have to start with something a little bit timely, and that is, and I'm gonna own this confession right now. I absolutely did not think the New Hampshire House would come together and pass a budget. And yet today, with a pretty strong number and then a voice vote to sort of seal the deal, they passed a budget. And I'm hearing bipartisan. I'm seeing positive statements from both the House Democratic and Republican leaders. What do you think? And it sounds like there's some pretty decent things in it for communities, some investments.
I agree.
What's your early word?
I am with you.
Okay.
It was a surprise. I am really pleased with the budget that has been presented or approved. it's looking at the formula for public education. It is adding more funds to affordable housing, which we know is so important. Right. So it was, worked on. I have to give credit to Matt Wilhelm. I know that his leadership, and he's been working very hard on this, so I appreciate that. They have been communicating with the local communities and our needs and have listened. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, good news. Nice to hear progress.
Yes.
You get used to all the shouting and screaming, and people forget that there's a way to do this in a bipartisan way. So it's nice. It's a nice tone. Feels good. Something to celebrate. Within that, you just talked about a couple of the topics that are coming your way with state funds that have been some longtime priorities around here. And I think it's natural for all of us to sort of see the punch list of items that we want for our communities, and it's like, okay, let's go right now. And it's not like you can add water and grow affordable housing in a month. There are a lot of projects going on in Manchester right now. What's your sense of the solutions around affordable housing? You're 10 million, more money coming from the state. How are we doing in resolving that and doing what I know the Manchester Chamber wants to do, which is recruit and retain workforce of all ages to be able to come and work and live and play here?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we have over 2,000 units in development right now in the city of Manchester. 500 of those are affordable. We have to look and make sure that we're providing different options of housing, so single-family homes, condos, apartments, and at different levels. So we're doing all that we can. I wish it would happen quicker, as you mentioned. I mean, because we needed more housing yesterday, a year ago.
Right.
But I am thrilled with the progress we've made. We have new developers coming into the city, which I think is exciting. And just driving around, looking at the progress that's being made, is a good thing. But yeah, we're trying to get more going, investing. We know that construction costs have increased since COVID, 40 to 50%.
Right.
So the funding is critical to helping the developers get started in these projects. And so that's what we're doing.
You also mentioned that the rehab and reform of zoning rules and laws. I know that we can all sort of deal with bureaucracy from time to time. It can be difficult. It can be nameless and faceless, and no is the first word, and how can we get to yes? How is that going to progress, and what kind of impact do you think that'll have on this kind of a priority?
It will have a huge impact. It's in progress right now. We did a lot of work in communicating with business owners in the community on what their needs are. So that's been integrated, and our planning department is working on it. But it's basically looking at how can we increase density in the city of Manchester. Next month, I believe there's going to be recommendations on changing for accessory dwelling units. So single-family homes can have another unit on their property if it's approved, which would be helpful as well. And so many communities are actually not doing this work, but I would say, Manchester is doing it, and for good reason. We need to increase housing in our city. We have all of these jobs coming, as you mentioned, and we need to make sure that we have appropriate housing for individuals. I was talking to a local company, and we were talking about the housing crisis and their need for hiring, and they had hired a couple individuals, and they were actually housing them in a hotel because they couldn't find housing locally. And that's, it's a real issue, and we all need to just have an all-hands-on-deck approach to this. The city of Manchester, I'm sure I've mentioned this during one of my State of the Cities before, but when I first took office, I noticed that we had a couple parking lots that were really underutilized. So we're now in the process of developing those with mixed-use housing. There'll be commercial on the first floor and housing above, in addition to having parking garages on both properties. And so that's really an exciting opportunity, and that's what we're doing. At every opportunity we can, we're looking to say, how can we develop this? How can we make the city better?
Yeah. What is your sense of the feedback that you and your leadership team, all your department heads, a number of whom are here today, what is the feedback you're getting from the community about economic development, about workforce, about housing? How are we doing?
Well, I'm getting great feedback. It's been exciting, right? The Build Back Better Challenge, that win with $44 million coming into the city, that has just, to me, changed the trajectory of where the city is going. And so we all know about it, but when we talk about it to others, I know Ted and Jody just went to a conference with airlines, and so they were talking about it, and the excitement that you hear from people, and same thing with me. You know, it's people understand that we're building a brand new industry in the city of Manchester in the Mill Yard, and the excitement around that is wonderful. And at the same time, we're seeing new small businesses come into town, housing being developed. You know, we have cranes in the city, which is exciting to me, and so there's progress.
We'll talk about some of the challenges and some of the specifics here in a second, but you mentioned Ted, who I feel like I need to send the man a fruit basket because he's opened a couple of airlines here in a pretty short period of time, and because that's been a quiet conversation, and now we're seeing some real progress. And Joni Nazaka's here, the Economic Development Director, and Chief Al Aldenberg, Chief Ryan Cashin. You know, it's not normal for us to be able to quickly raffle off and prattle off the names of the department heads in the city as people that are at the table, part of these meetings, a part of the active conversations, but yet this team really is, and I feel like that is a difference.
We have an extremely strong leadership team in the city and in the school district. It's really phenomenal.
Yeah, Jen Gillis, sorry,
yes,
I omitted Jen.
So it's, I lean heavily on them, you know, and I trust their guidance. They're the experts in their field, and they work collaboratively, you know, and so that's a great thing. And it came to light for me really during COVID, when we were spending a lot of time in the Emergency Operations Center, and, you know, working together. Anna Thomas, you know, I mean, the list can, you know, goes on and on and on.
Right.
So, yeah, I am tremendously grateful for the leadership that's in the city.
You have a good team, definitely a good team. So in terms of some of the conversations and questions that we got, there were definitely a few around the issue of dealing with the public safety and homelessness, those challenges. So I was wondering, with Adrienne Boulogne, that you've mentioned before, so she's in the trenches getting some things done. You mentioned 3 emergency shelters, and one of them is going to be extended for a bit, which is, that's news.
It is. So we have, just on Tuesday, we voted on a couple things. One is that we have now a Department of Housing Stability.
Okay.
So it is a department with Adrienne, an administrative coordinator, and so that is going to be the place that people can go to with questions or concerns. It has sort of moved around in the city since it's been here. We thought it was really important that it be its own entity, so people understood what it is and the resources that are available. Adrienne is doing a great job collaborating with the nonprofits in the city of Manchester, with the business community, with the residents, and you know, she's part of the Governor's Council on Housing Stability at the state. She's a member of the COC now. She's going to be leading the effort with the National Alliance to End Homelessness. So she's really, you know, hit the ground running, which is exciting. As you mentioned, we opened up 3 emergency shelters this winter because we needed more capacity.
Right.
And we voted on Tuesday to extend the Beach Street shelter for 2 months. So it'll be open through the end of June. It's really interesting when you sort of dig into that shelter. It has a capacity of housing 40 people. And what we're finding is about 30 of those individuals have stayed there since day one. And so there's been a great opportunity to build relationships with those individuals and to put together a path for them as they come out of the shelter. None of them want to be homeless. There are people that do want to live outside, but these 30 people don't want to be living outside. So really, we're really going to focus on the next few months of working with them to get them on a path to where they need to be. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the collaboration with the nonprofits, with Families in Transition, with Manchester Mental Health, with Healthcare for the Homeless, with Gatehouse. They're all partnering with us, spending time in the shelter and working with the individuals who are there to help them. So, you know, one entity we know can't do this alone, especially government. This is the first time that we ever set up an emergency shelter, and it's the first time a municipality has done it in the state. But it's been going extremely well. I know Dave Fleury is here. He played a lead role in doing all of this, spent many hours there. So yeah, I'm grateful for the efforts and feel really good about, you know, what we're doing. We have effectively taken people off the street and we're giving them we're providing them the services they need to get better.
That's great. I mean, Patrick Tufts is here, the United Way, and
And
2 on
true.
1, and Maria
Yeah.
Devlin is sitting here as well, hardworking from Families in Transition. It strikes me that it does require a really intensely close relationship with the city, with the different services, with the nonprofits, and with residents to be
Right.
able to figure this out. Because how hard is this? Because it strikes me that this drills down to individual challenges that are unique to each individual who's out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's not a one-stop shop for anyone.
no.
You mentioned the United Way, and I have to mention Patrick and the United Way stepped up right when we did this and put together a fundraising option. He's raised $60,000 to go toward our efforts. Again, this is something that the city hadn't planned on doing, but there was a need for it. And so I often call Patrick because he's been involved in all of this for many, many years, and he's a great resource and a problem solver, and I appreciate what he's done.
We know that when the weather gets better, this becomes a problem that sort of falls out of the immediate sight line. And then when the weather starts getting very cold, we begin to see the urgency around the need. Do you think that with these new collaborations and some of these new pathways and doorways that we'll begin to see smaller populations of need in the future? Can you even predict that?
It's really hard. I mean, the hope is yes, but I speak to mayors every two weeks or so throughout the state, and Laconia, Keene, Nashua, everybody is seeing an increase in homelessness statewide, and so the hope is yes, but we don't know. One of the things that I remind people about is that we see individuals and we can see that they need help, whether it's substance use disorder or mental health. But until they want to get the help, we can't make them get the help. And so I'll say it's frustrating because that individuals need services, but they need to recognize that. And that's the value of doing the outreach efforts that a number of these nonprofits that I just mentioned and Squad 1 of the fire department and others are doing. So they're constantly going out and talking to individuals who are homeless and building relationships with those individuals. And the hope is that at a certain point in time, the individual will say, okay, I'm ready. And we've seen that, but it takes time.
Sure. Okay. Thank you, Mayor. I want to focus on Ted's work at the airport here a little bit, too. Many of you in this room may know, but maybe not, that there is a sort of a new collaboration of sorts that's happening between the city, its airport, and with the Chamber of Commerce. And there's essentially a committee called ASSET, which is efforting to try to blend all the good things that are happening in the city's business realm with the obvious sort of connection to our airport and being able to perhaps internationalize or nationalize our business structure and bring more bodies through the airport for a win-win kind of a relationship. Tell me what you hope will come from this kind of new collaboration.
Obviously, we want to make sure that we are using the airport. That's the first thing I want to tell all of you, because the airport is only successful if we fly in and fly out of Manchester-Boston Regional Airport. We want to encourage that. We want to increase traffic. We want to see international flights. If anyone can do it, Ted can. No pressure. But
he's already 2 for 2.
He's done an amazing job with the time that he's been here.
Right.
We have seen a drastic change in what is happening at that airport. So it's an exciting opportunity. We would love to see additional, airlines coming in. We'll see.
Not to put you or him on the spot, because Ted's on the chamber board too, so I kind of feel like I can talk about him knowing that I know him. But what has been the difference? What was the spark? Because it seemed like we were butting our heads against the wall trying to keep the operations going and watching things go away, and now it's just off like a shot.
So when Ted came in, he looked at the operations of the airport, and he put together a package. I'm going to sort of dummy it down, refinance.
Please do.
He refinanced the airport, and so he made the cost per enplanement. He effectively decreased the cost per enplanement, which made it more appealing to airlines coming into Manchester. And so he's continuing to look at ways that we can become more effective and more efficient. He's built great relationships with individuals and from outside of Manchester, outside of the state, and I know he's going to continue doing so.
Ted, thanks for your work. Let's talk about public safety. You talked about the percentages dropping down. If you live on social media, and I kind of quasi-do with work, although I probably could get away from it a bit more than I do, it can sometimes feel like there's a lot going on, a lot of crime on the streets, constant, it's not, for scanner bugs, you could be listening all the time,
Sure.
maybe not necessarily catching the accuracy of what's really going on, but you get the call and it's pushed out there. There are probably people, maybe especially in the downtown area, a little bit nervous about public safety. So the numbers may be dropping, but some concerns there. What can you say to allay some of those concerns?
Yeah, a couple things. One is Manchester's the largest city in the state, and I sort of sometimes say it's the only city in the state, right? Major city in the state, and we have city issues in Manchester where some other communities in the state don't. But we've increased the number of police officers. We've increased foot patrols, which we know are very effective. So they're going out at 6 a.m. in the morning and staying through the evenings and making sure there's a presence on the street in downtown. We're looking at environmental design. So are there areas of the city that we can change to make them more safe? Are there issues? Is there, illegal dumping? Is there brush that's overgrown? So looking at situations like that to make things more safe. But it is a situation where we know that a lot of information is put out by the Manchester Police Department, good and bad. And as a former commissioner, you understand that very well. But what's important also to note is it seems like every time they put something out about an issue, there's an arrest almost immediately. They do a great job of making sure that they are finding the person and arresting the person doing the crime. Yeah. I think it's also important to note bail reform and the effects that that's had in the city.
Right.
So, Chief Aldenberg and I have been spending time in Concord advocating for some changes in that. We're hopeful to see that and hope that that'll make a difference. He was in Concord yesterday mentioning again that crime has decreased, but I'm pretty sure he said there were 700 arrests in 9 months, and these were individuals that were out on bail. And so they're really tracking and measuring the impact that that is having in our community. There needs to be some changes on that.
Lieutenant Matt Barter of the Manchester Police Department is sort of like, he's the data guru of the department. He tracks a lot of this information, and he helped implement some of the technology that's being used to maximize the resources of officers on the streets. What difference is he and that technology making in your perspective?
Oh, huge. I mean, Matt, to your point, he is a data geek, and
Yeah.
I love it. I mean, we're getting information. So, one of the things that he's heading up is they are looking at overdoses and overdose deaths on a daily basis, and pushing that information out to, again, our nonprofit partners and city leadership. And when we see a spike, we are sending out a team to address that pinpoint of an area in the city of Manchester to help individuals. That's just one small example, but that's having a huge impact in our community. He's also leading up the gun violence prevention strategy, working with a number of different law enforcement agencies in the city of Manchester. He does an awful lot, and it's the shot spotter and Fusus and body camera. I mean, we have access to information that is enabling the police department to understand specifically where issues are occurring and providing them with a level of safety that they didn't have before they go to a certain area.
Do you think the community of community policing is a factor in this as well? Because you can have great technology, but if you don't have the relationships on the street, you're not getting anywhere.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, in downtown, we all know Anna by name.
Yeah.
And there are other officers in other neighborhoods that are the same thing. The community policing is a key component of this. So yeah, I'm grateful for all they do with the relationships that they have. We're starting up the senior walks, I think this week or next week. The police department does a great job.
And let me back you up, because you talked about the bail reform, which is an ongoing conversation. It raises the hackles on both sides of this conversation. What do you hope the reforms will ultimately look like?
Well, what's being discussed in Concord right now is looking at specific crimes and ensuring that those crimes will go to a judge versus a bail commissioner. And so we're hopeful that that passes and makes a difference.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's been a sort of a frustrating reality happening here in Manchester. You had also mentioned the overdoses, the resources for treatment, the resources for response on the street. I think I saw Chris Stewart walking in from AMR, and I know that like workforce development and the number of pieces on the number of bodies on the bus that he needs to be able to respond to these calls, it's kind of desperate because there's not exactly enough help out there. What more can we do? What can the community do when it comes to this issue and it comes to public safety?
In terms of overdoses or workforce development?
In terms of overdoses and in terms of the overall sense of public safety, what can we do?
Well, I mean, from a community perspective, I always say if you see something, say something. That's the best thing. So we want to make sure that our police department, our fire department understands what's going on in the community if they don't already know. That's the most important thing, communication. And, you know, from my perspective and Chris, I'm so grateful for the information that he not only the service that they provide, but he's providing us, again, with data. Both Manchester and Nashua get data on a monthly basis, so we understand the trends that are happening with overdoses and overdose deaths. It's really, really critical to understand that so that we can make a difference. We're fortunate that Chris does that for us. There's not a Chris in the other parts of the state, but in speaking to mayors, I know that they're seeing the same increases. So that's sort of hard when it comes to media, right? So we make the headlines, but it's really happening statewide. And so again, I have to bring it back to Manchester leading, right? So we understand what's happening in our community. We have effectively implemented programs, evidence-based programs to help individuals get through this.
Do we need more treatment? And if so, how do we get more? How do we do that? Because that seems like a hurdle.
Yeah, I mean, we do need more treatment. I would say if I had a wish, I would wish for supportive housing. I think that's really something that we need.
What's that look like? What is supportive housing?
It's housing first, affordable housing, but there are supports built in. So, you know, it's really hard to take someone off the street that's homeless and put them into an apartment. I've talked to a number, again, of the nonprofits here, and they tell stories such as, you know, we got an apartment for someone who had been homeless, but we had to put a tent up in the living room because they didn't feel comfortable living. Or they had an apartment, but they would go out at night to the encampment because they were used to the community and the noise and didn't feel comfortable in a quiet apartment. So it's not the transition that we would make. It's different. And so supportive housing provides a communal living and the supports, mental health, substance use disorder, the supports that are necessary for someone to live and get better. That, to me, is a huge need, not only in Manchester, but statewide.
Okay. Another issue that you talked about that I know are very interested parties here in terms of education and that workforce development pipeline. There's a lot going on with public schools in Manchester nowadays, and I know Dr. Gillis is not only working on content and curriculum, but talking about the long-range, long-term plan for the buildings themselves. I've been in the same room with her when she's talked about the average age of some of our school buildings, and it's like a little old. So what do you see happening, and what do you see as the legacy? Because this is a conversation and probably a capital plan that's going to take some time.
It is, and that's an important point to this, right? It's not going to happen overnight, but we're having conversations with the community right now, and again, it's really important that you participate in those conversations because the feedback that we get will go directly into the plan of what we're going to do with our facilities. I believe Jen had the first meetings yesterday or the day before. There was a great turnout, so we hope that that continues. It's an exciting time. We know that changes have to be made in our buildings, and whether it's decreasing, right? It's hard. And you know, you mentioned I graduated from Memorial. My grandmother, my father, my kids all went to Central. So it's hard when you think about the possibility of a high school going away, but it's hard also to see the schools not full and thriving, right? And when we have to merge teams, for example, so On Monday, we're going to be talking about the girls' hockey team, and that's going to be comprised of West, Memorial, and Central now.
Right.
So we're having to do that, and the time is now to make these difficult decisions, but it's for the best interests of our youth, and that's what we all have to keep in mind.
So you have a stake in this as a graduate memorial and your kids and family with links to Central. What is, because it seems like everything's on the table. It feels to me like what Dr. Gillis is doing is pushing out here are the options, here are what the price tags are going to ultimately be, and here's what we need to be able to accomplish. So if you had any advice for the passionate folks that want to preserve their bricks and mortar and no, keep this school here, what's your advice for how they should approach this conversation?
With an open mind.
Yeah.
With an open mind. And keep in mind that, again, everything that we're doing is to increase student achievement, is for the best interest of our students. Our buildings are very old, very old. It doesn't mean they're bad, but when you go and you visit newer schools and you see the different learning environments that students have available to them, that's when you say, oh boy, we could and should be doing better for our students and for our teachers.
What are some of your areas of pride in the public school system right now, and things that you are seeing that may not be getting the attention, but are really signs that we're moving in the right direction?
So when you walk into our schools, the students are engaged. They are engaged. And I feel like sometimes that's not the message that gets out, right? We have incredible teachers. I'll say with pride, my daughter is a first-year teacher in the Manchester School District. So that, I'm so proud of her for doing that. It's not an easy job, but that's it. You go into the schools and these kids are so happy. They're engaged with their teachers. We're doing innovative programs too. We have a group at Manchester School of Technology that built an airplane. We've got innovative programs when you talk about workforce development where we're doing paraprofessional to teacher, providing additional education for our educators. And so I feel like we're looking at this education in the city of Manchester in a holistic way. How do we attract and retain individuals in our schools? It has to be a really good, environment too. We have great leadership in our schools now, and then how do we increase student achievement? And we're on the right track.
So that's the positive, exciting side. What do you see are the biggest challenges to overcome? And maybe some of it, maybe it's that workforce development and retention. I mean, I think there's teacher openings in every district in the state. That's got to be a big piece of it.
I feel like we're doing better than the average district from an educator perspective.
Oh, good.
We're having a hard time finding paraprofessionals, so working on that. I guess, we talked about the facilities. That's sort of one of the
That's
negatives.
a big one, yep.
And, if we hadn't addressed the curriculum, that would have been like at the top of the list. But we've now got standard curriculum in our schools, and forever we didn't. And we know there's a lot of movement in our district, so kids will start in one school and go to another. So it's really hard for them because there wasn't a standard curriculum. What was at one school may have been different at another. But now there's a standardization, so again, that will help with improving student achievement.
You mentioned Manchester Proud before, and that was at one point a collaboration with the Chamber as well.
Yes.
Share with me your perspective on the impact that group has had on the conversation.
Manchester Proud has had a tremendous impact on this school district. They drove the bus in terms of ensuring that we have a strategic plan, again with phenomenal feedback from this community. People participated, provided feedback, and that was integrated into the strategic plan. And with that now, there's a vision, a long-term vision for the district. The board voted to approve it, so now everything that we're doing is looking at, growing our learners, growing our educators, and building technology into the district. And so it's a guiding document that the district never had before. And one of their events that they have in the summer, Celebrate Ed, has been a fantastic opportunity to showcase all that's happening in our district, the talent that we have, and getting all the families and students together in one place has been really fun.
So you've been doing this now for multiple terms, working with the business community on a wide variety of different projects. What do you need from business leaders going forward? And acknowledging that we're already doing kind of a bunch of things together.
Yeah,
but
I was just going to
what do
say
you-
that.
What do you want?
I appreciate all of the support and assistance from the business community. You haven't been shy, and I appreciate that too. But it's the collaboration, right? Again, I said this earlier, one entity can't take this on their own. And from the business community's perspective, it's important for the mayor and for our departments to understand what they're hearing and seeing, what the impact is on their business for whatever reason, and then to communicate that back to Manchester so that we can address it or build policy to better meet their needs. There have been a number of public-private partnerships that have happened in the city of Manchester since I've been mayor, which I'm tremendously grateful for because we know there are limited funds. And so we've been able to do things because of those partnerships.
Do you think that's a model that needs to be permanent in terms of Manchester's long-term success, this type of collaboration?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Definitely should be.
All right, so Ted has given me the signal that we're about approaching final landing, so put your tray tables away and seats in upright. And so let me finish with a few sort of personal questions. Take advantage of the fact that you've announced that you're not running for re-election, so you are no longer leashed to talking points. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
I want to get a
sweating.
sense from you of things that you will perhaps miss the most. Let's start with that.
Yeah, I mean, working with the leadership team in the city and the school district is one of the things that I'll miss the most.
Yeah.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. They are an incredible group of dedicated, hardworking people. And it has been so great working with them, very fulfilling. And so I'll miss that. I'll miss knowing what's going on, you know.
I mean, you certainly do that,
yeah.
right?
No, I won't miss the late night early calls, but yeah, you know everything that's going on in the city, and
Yeah.
I'll miss that. And I'll miss the interaction that I have with youth. So whether it's going into schools or young kids will come into my office before the school board meeting, they say the pledge, talking with them, it's, those are a few. There'll be a lot that I'll miss.
Sure.
But those are a few of the things.
You have 8 months of working with the school board and the aldermen, so I won't ask whether or not you're going to miss any of that.
Good.
But with that said, what have been some of the hardest aspects of the jobs, or the thing that, like, even as someone who was on the school board and serving as an alderman, if you had to peek behind the curtain way before you got the job. But did anything really surprise you as, oh, this is not what I expected it to be?
One of the hardest things has been, from my perspective, when it comes to the budget. So for me, a budget should represent your vision and goals for a community. And the city of Manchester has a tax cap. And so as mayor, you know what the needs are, but you can't always address them because there's a cap on a budget. So I've presented my budget, and if I couldn't address certain things, I've mentioned that in my address, and then worked with aldermen to make sure we did as best we could. Obviously, we want to keep taxes down. I felt really good about this budget because we were able to pretty much do everything that we wanted to do to address the needs in the community. So as I'm heading out, I was able to really put together a budget that will provide a good future for the city of Manchester.
I think that's great. We see the news. A lot of us sort of watch politics from the sidelines. You live it as a job every single day. Has it changed a lot over the last 5 or 6 years? Because as a news consumer, it feels like things like the words like compromise is a bad word, and that the two sides are so entrenched in wanting what they want that the good old days of the Tip O'Neill Speaker of the House kind of approach to, I'm going to yell at you in front of the microphone, and then we're going to go grab a beer and figure this out and come out with an announcement. That's what I think we were so used to for years, and we haven't had that in a while. What is it like at this local level?
It's different at the local level,
Okay,
thankfully.
good.
Our elections are nonpartisan. People do know what party you're affiliated with. But, you know, you are living in the community that you're serving. And so you have to make a difference. You have to work together. There's compromise in almost everything that I do. But it's because we need to serve and meet the needs of our community. You know, I will see people at a grocery store, at the gas station, or walking down Elm Street, and they may mention an issue if their trash wasn't picked up, or there's a pothole, or whatever.
Right.
But we don't ask what party affiliation you're with. You know,
Fair
it's like,
enough.
okay, I will call so-and-so and we'll take care of your issue.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that's how it should be and is at the local level.
Are you seeing that sense in the aldermanic chambers and
Yeah.
with the board and with others? I mean, listen, we've got, you know, there's flyers on both sides.
Absolutely.
But do you sense that people are all in that together?
Generally speaking, yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
Have you ever walked away from a meeting being like, I can't believe he or she just agreed with me on this thing?
Yes.
Yeah. And probably
Or
vice
I can't
versa?
believe they didn't.
How come they said no? Yeah.
Yeah,
How do you cope with those days that you just maybe want to punch somebody in the face?
I have great staff, and my husband
in the corner.
is very.
He's a good listener?
Very good listener. Yeah.
Excellent.
So I maybe can't sleep after the meetings for hours, but you know, I get it out before I go to bed.
Fair enough. All right, before I let you go, any parting advice or words of wisdom that you have for the community or for your successor?
You know, I just want to say thank you again to all of you. You have done so much to impact positively the city of Manchester, and I really appreciate the collaboration and assistance that you've provided to me. You know, in terms of who's going to take this seat next, I would say that, you know, it's really important to be a good listener and to work with our community. They know best, and we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to serve the needs.
Thank you, Mayor. So in speaking of some of those collaborations, I need to mention that our presenting sponsor, Bellwether Community Credit Union, investing sponsor, Christine Louise Publications LLC in Stroll, North End, Manchester. Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, Hoyle, Tanner and Associates, and New Hampshire Healthy Families were our advocate sponsors. And then the venue partner, of course, here, our host, New Hampshire Institute of Politics. Mayor Craig, thank you for this conversation.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate your service to our city in many ways over many years. We wish you the best for your final laps here as mayor of
you.
the city. And thank you for all you do for us.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.